So before the start of the season, I had put out a video on my Chicago Bulls season award predictions, and I'd kind of forgotten to actually come out with my season-ending awards for the Bulls, seeing as, how it was the end of the year, and I wanted to see how it actually stacked up versus my preseason predictions. And then I saw the Bulls Talk podcast come out with their season awards, and I thought, okay, it's time for me to do this. And boy, there were some drastic differences in terms of how I thought the year would turn out versus what actually happened. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're well, doing well. Guys, in case you missed my upload from yesterday, I put out a video on Chandler Hutchinson and why he deserves to be called out for his recent antics since being traded. So feel free to check it out in case you missed it. It'll be the first video on the end screen of this one. Anyway, let's talk about the Bulls season-ending awards, where I give out my very hypothetical award that of course doesn't actually exist to the MVP of the team, the most improved player of the year, the sixth man of the year, and the rookie of the year. And then I'll also do my biggest surprise and biggest disappointment. Now, some of this might sound a bit redundant given how I uploaded a video earlier in the week on the Bulls players' final grades for this season, but I'll dive into it a little more detail in this one for each of them, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on it as well. So with that, let's start off with the Bulls' first MVP award, and which is really a no-brainer, no surprise, and that goes to Zach Lavine. I mean, when you finish off the season with your best year of your career, when I really didn't think that he was going to have that much of a jump since last season, but ending the year averaging 27.4 points per game, 5 rebounds, and just a tad under 5 assists, all career highs in each of those categories. Not only that, but the biggest knock on Lavine previously was that he was a high volume scorer who was inefficient, but he goes from shooting 45% from the field last season to then 51% this year, 38% from 3 last season to then 42% in this season, and even improved his free throw shooting as well from 80% to 85%. Lavine set a new franchise record for 200 threes in a season when he only played 58 games for the year, and he was also selected to his first All-Star game, the Bulls' first All-Star since Jimmy Butler in 2017. And really, you can't compare Zach's performance to the rest of this roster, really even coming close to rivaling Lavine for that MVP award. Yes, there are things about Lavine's game that he still needs to work on, but you can't say anyone else on this team deserves the MVP over him, not even Vucevic or Thaddeus Young. Next, my most improved player of the year. This one is funny compared to who I had actually predicted would be taking it before the season started. I wanted to select initially Lauri Markkanen, as I assumed that he would have a bounce back season from what we saw last year after being coached by Jim Boylan, but we all know how that worked out. I then even thought about selecting Coby White before this season, given how he closed out the year with his amazing rookie performance before the season was suspended. But no, guys, I had actually predicted that Daniel Gafford, my guy Gafford, would be the Bulls' most improved player of the year in my video from earlier this season. I was so high on that guy to have a big jump from his rookie year. And well, of course, Gafford, although still showed the energy and the aggression we saw from his rookie season, he just wasn't that effective in what we had seen in his first year. He turned the ball over quite a bit, didn't show up well when starting at center after Wendell got injured, and then of course he got traded right before the deadline to the Wizards, which kind of took him out of the opportunity to even win something like this award for the Bulls, given he's no longer on the team. Although, given how he's been playing with the Wizards, you could argue he has improved incredibly from his rookie season, which is sad to say if you're a Bulls fan, because now knowing that you traded him away in just his second season in the league, maybe you start to think that it was a little too early to do that. But in any event, with all that aside, the guy who I did not expect to have an incredible bounce back season, actually had one of the best seasons of his career at the age of 32, was Thaddeus Young. When you look at how Thad's performed last season relative to how he was this year, it's hard to argue against him being the Bulls' most improved player. Thad improved his game in nearly every statistical category from last year with the exception of steals, and stats aside, Thad's presence on the court and his veteran leadership, his high basketball IQ, were unmatched from relatively any little difference, of what he showed last year anyway. Thaddeus Young said countless times this season how different this system was for him compared to where he was last year, and how Billy Donovan was really able to utilize his strengths to the fullest. Taking a few shots at Jim Boylan, which of course I don't have any problem with at all. Now, sticking with Thaddeus Young, I'm also going to go with him as the Bulls Sixth Man of the Year. Really another award that you can't argue against, especially when there's even an argument that can be made that Thaddeus was one of the top Sixth Man of the Year candidates in the entire league, not just for the Bulls. I actually think Thaddeus was more impactful and effective when he came off the bench, and based versus the handful of games where he actually started for the Bulls, just because he was such a great leader in that second unit. And more often than not, when Thaddeus started this season, he would get a little winded and tired towards the end of the game with the added minutes that he was actually playing. So listen, Thaddeus this season was absolutely incredible for the expectations that we had of him anyway, right? In his 14th season, coming off a pretty poor year last year, he was arguably the Bulls' second best player before the trades were made at the deadline, and I do still hope the Bulls fully guarantee the last year of his contract if they're able to make it work with their overall salary cap and bringing in an additional piece or two. $14 million is a lot for someone like Thaddeus Young at his age, but I think if you're the Bulls, you're going to need someone with his versatility, his experience, and leadership for the younger guys. Now, for Rookie of the Year, this one is pretty straightforward given the Bulls, although they did have two rookies this season, really only one played. So Rookie of the Year for the Bulls, you got to give it to Patrick Williams, who I actually thought had a decent rookie season. Not saying that it was a great rookie year or that it was better than expected, but a decent rookie season given the fact that he was drafted and then started in his first NBA game nearly 1 month later without a summer camp, a full training camp, and a shortened preseason. And for starting every game of the year, he was often tasked with guarding the opposing team's best players. And in just his first month in the league, he was assigned at guarding Giannis, LeBron, and Kawhi Leonard. He showed up very well. He poised and showed a lot of potential for his future in the NBA. I would have liked to have seen him be more aggressive overall, especially on the offensive end, because he clearly has the tools to be a great two-way player, and I think that will come with time. So I'm not concerned about Patrick Williams and the fact that the Bulls used a number 4 pick on him. I know some Bulls fans think that he's going to be a bust, but that kind of comment is very premature and is not a fair assessment of him at all, given the circumstances that really all rookies had to face this season, with it being their first year in the league in a pandemic and a shortened season. Now, as far as my biggest surprise of the year, aside from the fact that the front office made a trade for Vucevic, I don't think many of us were expecting that. But as far as player surprises, I have to go with Garrett Temple. And I know some people may not have been as surprised as I was by that, but that's mainly because I had such low expectations of him going into the season. I've mentioned this before, but I thought, that was when the free agency announcement was made that I thought it was very underwhelming and kind of a so what signing, that the Bulls were bringing him in on a 1-year deal. And I know the front office, was salary cap constrained going into the past offseason with Otto Porter's contract and of course Felicio's. But when I saw that they signed Temple, I was kind of like, this was the best that they could do with what they had to work with, but I was completely proven wrong. I'm not saying that Temple had an amazing season, but for his age, the amount that we brought him in for, the veteran experience, the leadership, and the hustle defense that he brought to the team, he was a huge piece for the Bulls this season that didn't really show up all too often in the stat sheet. I think people forget that he completely shut down Jason Tatum twice this season that led to Bulls winning games against the Boston Celtics. He also had some very big plays and shots late in games throughout the season that led to Bulls winning games. So overall, I was very pleasantly surprised with how Temple performed this year, and we'll have to wait and see what the front office does, and actually moving forward and re-signing him. I personally think a veteran minimum contract on a 1-year deal would be great if the Bulls were able to snag him for that amount. Anything more than that or a longer term deal at his age, the Bulls should likely pass and let him walk in free agency. But nonetheless, Bulls fans should be appreciative of his contributions that he provided this season. As far as my biggest disappointment, this one is hard because I had such high hopes for this guy in having a bounce back season, especially the way that he started out his NBA career, and that's Lauri Markkanen. Now, you're probably, surprised I didn't choose someone like Denzel Valentine because I've kind of been hating on him all season, but Denzel is who I thought he was going to be, so it wasn't really much of a disappointment, more so that he just fulfilled my expectations. But Markkanen, look, After his rookie season with the Bulls, there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to be a future star in this league, and I even thought he would be the face of the franchise over someone like Lavine. And in his second season, he showed even more improvement in that, and I knew that he was going to be on his way. But injuries derailed him a little bit. His shot started falling off. His defense just never really improved. He also started moving a lot more slowly on offense, and what I thought was maybe just an off year under a bad coach, turned out to really not be the case, in the fact that he regressed even further this season. I mean, Markkanen put up career lows in all major statistical categories, including advanced stats metrics, because yes, I know some will say, well, that's because he got less playing time, but even if you look at his per 36 or per 100 possessions, the numbers are still below what he was putting up in his second season. Where he did improve was his overall efficiency, which was nice to see. He did improve his shooting, particularly his three-point shooting, finishing the year just a little bit above 40% in that regard. And really, he got there with the way that he closed out the season in those final games. But for Markkanen, he started out the year very strong, playing in a contract year. Then he had to miss some time due to the NBA's health and safety protocol. He came back and looked decent, but then got injured and missed nearly 6 weeks. And ever since coming back from the injury, he just didn't look like the same player. And then, of course, he got benched when Billy Donovan preferred, giving more time to Tyson Thaddeus over Markkanen in favor of their defense, which I personally don't blame him. So, it'll be interesting to see how the Bulls approach this offseason with Lauri Markkanen. Obviously, as most of you know, Markkanen will be a restricted free agent, meaning he will be able to receive offers from any team in the league, but the Bulls would have the ability to match any offer he receives and retain him as a result. There have been rumors about the Bulls wanting to do a sign-in trade for Lauri, so they could get some kind of value for him in return. There have also been recent rumors that Lauri Markkanen has been interested in wanting to go to the Mavericks, which I don't know if those are actually true, and even if it is, I just don't really see how that is going to work, given they already have Porzingis, but I'll likely save that for a separate video. And of course, you had Arturas Karnisovas say recently in the team's exit interviews that they really value Lauri as a part of this team. So I honestly have no idea what Markkanen's future is going to entail. If I had to take a guess, I would say it's very unlikely he returns to Chicago, just because he doesn't really fit well with this team anymore, given the Bulls have the offensive weapons they need now, and they need to really start focusing more on defensive talent. On top of that, I'm sure some team is likely going to offer Markkanen a contract for more than what he's worth, and the Bulls are not going to be willing to match, even if they do still see potential in him. But either way, we'll have to find out how things shake out in just a matter of months here anyway. I want to hear what you guys think though. Who were the Bulls team season awards for you guys this year? Which player was the biggest surprise for you? Which was the biggest disappointment? Let me know in the comments, and as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I will continue to come out with content all off season. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. I really appreciate you, and I will catch you in the next one.